Hello, I'm Noir Nerd, and this is probably the second and final part on the little piece of work I've been doing around creating a template for the Twine format Snowman for loading in free 3D models. We're using Free.js. So I've modified it a lot, I've got it working a lot better, and I'm just going to quickly demo the template. So the function of the actual template is to allow you to build a Twine game, but then also call a function which then allows you to add in a 3D model, right? Which is very useful. And I've provided 4 examples for you, so you've got a reference you can refer to if you want to do this in your own game. So if you want to add in 3D model in GLB format in a variety of scenarios, then this template provides you the ability to do that with 4 fairly simple to follow examples. The only real caveat with it is that when you're testing it, to actually test the loading of the 3D models and such, as with images and sound, you need to build from within the Twine engine to just export the HTML file, have all the 3D models in the same folder, and you also do need to run it on a local server, which you can do either by using live server extension within VS Code, or you can run like a Python live server. But all that caveat out of the way, I'll just get on with showing it. So by the time you watch this video, the GitHub should be updated on the demo as well. So I did go over this a little bit in the last one, but I've changed it a lot, made it a lot better. And previously, for each of these little demos, and the animation wasn't working, which I've also got working now. In the previous one, I was actually putting the script in every single time on each passage. I wasn't loading in the Free.js and GLB loader every time. That would be really a lot of overhead. But I've changed that now, so basically the libraries get loaded in once as modules, and the script just gets called every time you want to do something different on it. So let's look at this. So first up, we've got this. So this is sort of familiar with what we had before. Loads in a model, and then it applies the rotation with a custom speed. Just so you get an idea of how simple it actually is to call this canvas. It's this. So it's when this is the function that basically does everything within the main.js code, so the JavaScript that's provided with this template. You have to do the window basically makes the external script accessible to Twine. I need to change that to a rotating model actually, but it's by the by. But yeah, so you've got this is how you'd load it. So you put in the script tag there, obviously in the Twine passage in Snowman format. You add a window and then load Free.js with model, which is the function name, and then we pass it a bunch of arguments based on some settings so we can modify certain things. So this one here is the path, the name of the model we want to load, obviously with the caveat, as I said, that the model has to be in exactly the right place. You wouldn't believe, because I teach this stuff, like how often students get this wrong or don't understand it, or students one day, so it's fine, I guess. This is a custom color for the ambient lighting, so you can change that to anything. For example, I'll show you an example of that later. This is the scale, so if you want to scale it up, scale it down. Very important 3D models to have that. X, Y, and Z positioning. And then finally, this is an optional argument that you pass to the function, which determines how fast it rotates around. So that's that one. The main thing that's new, which actually wasn't working last time, is we've got default animation trigger. That's a bit unscaled. I've probably just overscaled that before, but we've got a cowboy model there, and we can load that in, and that's automatically loaded. So if the model has any animations in the GLB file, it will just find all the animations that are on that model and just play them in succession. Now obviously this could be improved, so maybe trigger certain ones, but again, I don't want to make the arguments list to the actual function too long, so I'm keeping it simple for now. And then we have the same arguments being passed as parameters to this function, the model name, the ambient lighting, and positioning and scaling. We've also got, we can modify the ambient. You can't tell that much because the scaling's off a bit, but that's actually set the ambient lighting to red. You can tell a bit. And then finally we've got a static scene. So again, just simply there's no actual animations on that model, so probably the simplest way to do that at the minute would be just to well, there's two things to note here. Obviously I'm not passing it a speed for the final argument, so it just doesn't apply any rotation if nothing's been set there. So it just loads in the model, you add the ambient lighting, and then I set the scale and positioning, right? And that would just load that with no animation, unless there was animation on the model, then it might apply the animation. But for now I think that's probably a good starting point for if you want to create a Twine game with a Three.js scene template. And this could get quite powerful. Like, you could get, if you have a few custom models or some models you want to load in, with like just this very simple one line of code, you can do quite a lot of things. You can do already 4 things, variations of, have like characters that come up as 3D models, trigger in. Like I said, it's early days, but that does add a real extra layer of interactivity to a game if you want to make a game. And I did mention this other one, but yeah, it's responsive, so it will resize according to the display that it's on. So yeah, that's quite a nice feature, as you see. And yeah, that just gives it that that's obviously really useful, to be honest. Anyway, I'll show you the code quickly. If you're just interested in this as a thing, check out the GitHub. If you're interested in some of the code, I'm not going to go too deep into it, just keep on watching. But if you just want to have a look at this, then check out the GitHub repo. And I'll quickly just load this up. So all of the real logic is occurring here. It's what, 120, just over 120 lines of code. So just have a log to check that it actually loaded. We have this variable called cache modules. I'm loading them in as modules at once when the game first loads. Now, I've not really stress tested this, but it does seem to work. This is a bit fiddly as well, but yeah, basically with Snowman, I think a lot of the actual code gets exposed. You have to use the window keyword, which was a bit of a pain, really, just getting my head around that with Snowman, but I managed to figure it out. Just initially set those modules to null. Let's make this a bit bigger. VS Code. What's the other one? It's like set mode will do. Right. Let's make it a bit bigger. And then we just there's a synchronous function, and then it loads, imports in this model. This took me a while to figure out how to do this properly. It's just loading from a CDN, the latest model of Three.js, model library of Three.js. And then that cached modules variable is actually set to this free and GLTF loader for access later. And that's just try and catch, so if it doesn't work, we're going to get an error message returned. Well, the actual meat of this is this is the entire function, which I've eventually landed on for now. Now, obviously, I've had to do a bit of balancing, like features with complexity of this, because I don't want it to get. It's already quite complex, a fairly complex function. I mean, it's doing fairly typical things. You've got the actual loading of a model, which is a fairly typical thing. Then, obviously, I want to add a degree of customization, so I've added the model path, light, scale, positive scores there. Because those are the common scenarios I've figured out that you'd actually want to modify the model. Rotation could probably be added, but then again, I don't want it to have to pass like more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 arguments, because that would get annoying quite fast. I'm just trying to balance simplicity with some functionality, right? Check if there's an existing canvas, so we don't obviously load up loads of canvases at the same time. That would really not be optimized. That would cause performance issues and probably make it cause it to crash. We've got cache modules, so we're just accessing both the libraries through those, because you don't have to load the same libraries every single time we load a scene, if that makes sense. Create a new scene. All of this is fairly typical stuff if you're familiar with Three.js. We load in our ambient light. That's the argument. That's the custom light that we send down. directional light is just always going to be set to white, but you can modify the white light, the ambient light, so I think it makes a difference. I've set the background to black. I could probably customize that if I wanted to, but again, if you are using this template yourself, you can just modify it to whatever you want, basically. The camera just sets all that stuff up. The renderer, that's our container, which actually the responsive container that contains the actual canvas where the FreeJS, the WebGL content will be rendered. This is all tied in with the animations, variables for that, and then we've got the actual loader here, which is where the model's actually loaded in. So again, we're passing it a custom path, so you can, every time you call a function, you can change that, because it's not hard coded with like a value. That would be silly. That was sort of what I was doing before, but it was not, not the ideal way to do it. So like from the way I was doing it before, I was adding the function every single time, and that's just, it's obviously inefficient, and this would save you literally on thousands of lines of code. That was only an experimental version before, but add that, model to the scene, which is defined there. Check if the pos X and Y's have been set, and then check set them if there are custom ones set up, otherwise just set a default. Same for scaling, just set a default, or else just set a generic scale. Bit of logging just to check everything's worked. This is animations, so if the animation is more than 0, so it basically are their animations, set up a new mixer, and then do a for each loop, and get the player the animations to play. Else there's nothing found, so it just gives you that message. If there's an error of loading the model, you get a little error message, so a little error catch in there. We've got animate, which basically just runs all the animation. The renderer, which just renders the scene, and then that's called in the render loop. That's it basically. So I'll leave it at that. Check it out if you have the time. You've got the source code, you can use it for whatever you want. If you do use it for anything, we should see what people do. I might actually try and make something with this in this style, with like a typical Twine game except with 3D graphics, because I don't think many people do that really. I've not really seen many people doing it. But yeah, feel free to use this if you're really stuck for using 3D models loading into a Twine game. That's basically why I made it over 2 days. Alright, let me know what I heard. Like and subscribe if you found this interesting. That's it.